Is this the best neutral Dior eyeshadow palette, or is it just the same palette that we see from literally every other brand? If you want to hear all of my thoughts, keep watching. What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. This video is going to be my long-awaited review of the Dior Bal Masque palette. I have swatches, I have a daylight tutorial, and also I'm gonna do some comparisons with palettes from other brands. If you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And also, before we get into it, if you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Sophia and I am a complete luxury beauty addict. We love Dior on this channel. We love Chanel, Tom Ford, Guerlain, lots of luxury and high-end brands. So if that is your jam, hit that subscribe button to join our fam. We would love to have you. I upload new videos every single week, and as a quick reminder, friends, I will be linking any of the makeup that is on my face today and where you can purchase this palette in the description box down below. I do use affiliate links, so I earn a small commission when you shop through my links. Thank you so much to those of you who have supported my channel so far. All right, friends, let's get into it. This is number 503 Bal Masque from Dior. It is a beautiful, cool toned brown palette. There's something very elegant and soft and slightly smoky about this that I really love. I know that this is a very popular color story. I will also show you guys here the daylight swatches. Notice how you have a good range of tones. We have a dark brown there to build up some depth, which I'll show you guys how to do in the tutorial in just a second. We also have a medium toned and lighter toned satin shades, which are great for kind of one and dones and every day. And then finally at the top there, you do have two sparkly shades, one of which is a topper, which is really good for brightening up the eye. Also, friends, this retails for $65. It is made in France, and these still do have the 6-month shelf life. A lot of you guys may know Dior recently reformulated all of their eyeshadow palettes. So if you are looking for some of the older shades in the line, unfortunately, they were discontinued. This one, however, is a new one that is a part of the range. It came out a little bit after they revamped the whole collection, and a lot of you guys asked me to review this because obviously it's a neutral palette. It's automatically going to be very popular. So I am gonna focus a lot in this video on kind of the comparisons, whether or not this is something that is worth picking up. If you already have soft cashmere, if you already have the Natasha Denona Glam palette maybe. So we will get to those comparisons in just a second. And I will also let you guys know in my final thoughts, whether or not I think this formula is good given the reformulation. So let's get into the demo now, guys, and then we'll get into the comparisons and my final thoughts after that. Okay, party people, let's get this palette on my face. I think I'm gonna start off with the center shade right here because that one is the softest and it strikes me as a good shade to just kind of prime the lid all over. I also think that this is a stunning one and done shade because see how these are a little bit more sparkly? You can probably use these to kind of layer on top, but the center shade, oh, it is just a stunning, stunning satin. So I'll show you what it looks like on both eyes. So imagine you could just pop that on maybe a little bit on the lower lash line, go to work, go throughout your day. You can wear it out at night. It's super beautiful. And by the way, friends, I am filming in natural light. If you're new here, I always film all of my demos in natural light so you guys can see what this looks like in real life. I'm just gonna take that color along the lower lash line as well. I like that it's not too dark because when I look at this palette, I do kind of think that it's a little bit more of a smoky palette, but because this shade is so soft and elegant, I feel like you can do a lot with it. Next, I'm gonna go into the darker satin shade right here with a slightly more precise brush. And I'm just going to put that on the outer half of the lid. And you can kind of see the difference between those on the eye. See how this one has a lot more of a metallic sheen. So this center one, very soft, really good kind of one and done. And then this one right here, it just sort of amps it up. You could certainly apply this all over the lid if you wanted to start off with just like a smokier base. I really like the finish of this one. You can kind of see it reflected there in the light. I am now gonna dip into the chocolate brown right here, and I'm gonna build up a little bit of depth here in the crease, adding some dimension to the look. Seems to be blending pretty well. I know that the mattes in these reformulated palettes, they are a little bit drier than the previous ones. If you guys watched my review comparing the new and old formula with the soft cashmere palette, I did tell you that I liked the old formula better. Unfortunately, you can't get it anymore. The darker brownie shade that's in the soft cashmere palette, I feel like the new formulation is not as good. That one swatches a little bit patchier. I do think that this one in this palette, just from testing it out and kind of swatching it, playing around with it, I do think it swatches a little bit better. And I'm not having any issues with it right now. You can see the depth that I created with that shade, and it's pretty pigmented. I'm being careful because I don't want it to be too crazy and I don't want it to get messy, but I definitely think you can build this shade up a little more if you needed to. I also think that all of these shades should pop on most skin tones, especially because you have a really nice sheen for all of them. So you kind of get that light reflection. It's gonna pop even on a deeper skin tone. And then I think on most skin tones, this deeper shade that I'm using right now, it should add some depth. I'm taking just a little bit of that darker metallic and putting it slightly on the outer corner here just to connect the colors. I'm not using the chocolate brown because I don't want it to be too dark. And then now that I have kind of the base look done, I want to go in with these two shades, which are a little bit sparklier, and kind of layer them on top. These to me seem noticeably shimmery, and so I'm just gonna put a touch of that in the center. You can kind of see how that illuminated the center of the eye. This is the one that is a little bit darker than this one. The other one we will apply in the inner corner in just a second. This is an interesting palette because it's almost like you can kind of create a similar look to soft cashmere, for example, but you have varying degrees of metallicness and shimmeriness. You can go very basic, you can go more metallic, or you could go more glittery. So I kind of like that option when it comes to this palette. And as promised, I'm gonna go into this white shade here and pop that baby in the inner corner. This is the perfect little highlight topper shade. It doesn't have a ton of opacity. It's more like a highlight. You could put it all over the eye, but it would be quite frosty. Maybe you would put a little bit of powder down as a base and then layer this on top. That could be really pretty, but I really like this to highlight. And you know what, I'll just put a little bit in the center of the eye to show you. Do you see how that is lighter than what we had down before? I just kind of did that for science, not necessarily because we needed it for this look. But what I love about these types of shades is like you really can add it through here and it almost looks like a strobe of light. Like it really kind of makes the eyeball look bigger. And then I'm just going to blend around the edge of the look with my little mini powder here. I'll put the shade name down below. This one is from Hourglass. And this just makes the look a little bit neater and makes sure that none of this darker shadow here kind of transfers throughout the day as I'm blinking and moving my eyes. All right, friends, this is the final look. I applied a dark black brown liner and some mascara. I will link the ones that I used in the description box. And I think it came out really beautifully. I think this also was very easy to create. I love the different finishes in this look. It's definitely a cross between kind of a gray and also a brown, very cool toned, very elegant. Comment down below and let me know what you think of this look. It is now the time we've all been waiting for, time for the comparisons. I have a couple of very similar palettes here that you guys have requested comparisons for. So now let's dive into that. Starting off with this palette, Bal Masque versus the classic Dior Soft Cashmere. Here we are, friends, Bal Masque versus Dior Soft Cashmere. They look pretty similar, do they not? In all of these comparisons, by the way, I'm gonna be showing you Bal Masque on the left and then the comparison palette on the right, and I will show you side-by-sides of the palettes and also side-by-sides of the swatches. Looking at these in the pan, they really don't look that different, but the first impression that I have is that Bal Masque is a little bit more brown, whereas Soft Cashmere is a little bit more gray or grayish, as some might say. Also, I did notice during the application that the deeper, more cocoa brown shade in Bal Masque, it seemed a lot smoother, easier to build up and smooth across the eye than the one in the reformulated Soft Cashmere palette. So let's take a look at the swatches here so you can see the differences between the finishes. And voila, here are the swatch comparisons with Bal Masque on the left and Soft Cashmere on the right. I think that Bal Masque, it has a little bit of a softer look because it is the brown, and also because that center shade is much lighter than anything that you get in soft cashmere. So I think if you're going for something that is a little bit more like the nude brown side, I would recommend Bal Masque. And with soft cashmere, it just comes out a little bit smokier and steelier. I don't think that necessarily one of them is better. I just think that they have slightly different undertones. But if you already have soft cashmere and you are happy with it, friends, I don't necessarily think that you need to run and pick this one up. They are both very, very similar palettes. Next up, we have the classic nude dip from Tom Ford. So here is a side-by-side. I would say that these two shades are probably the most similar to the ones in Bal Masque, but then these right here, you know, this is a little bit more of like a cream tone. You don't get that in the Dior palette. And then this shade right here, similar to soft cashmere, it's a little bit more on the gray side. And then here's the swatch comparison to demonstrate that, friends. If you really wanted a lighter shade that was more opaque, unlike the topper that you get in Bal Masque, I would go for the Tom Ford palette. Also, as you can see, the Tom Ford Wet Dry formula, it's just like a totally different look on the eye. I would say that the colors, they really kind of blend together a lot. So you get kind of like a nice soft airbrushed effect, whereas I like the fact that with the Dior palettes, I have a true matte in there, so I can really build up some depth and kind of smoke it out. I like being able to play around with the topper shades. So I think if you don't have a lot of time on your hands or you want something quicker, I often would recommend the Tom Ford Wet Dry Formula palettes. But if you want kind of more options for different looks, that's kind of where I usually point people towards the Dior palettes. Next up in our comparisons, we have the YSL Mini Couture Clutch palette in Stora Dolls, another very similar palette, and kind of like in Tom Ford Nude Dip, you really aren't getting this kind of creamier shade. Also, I will mention that the shimmer shades that come in these YSL palettes, they do tend to be a little bit more glittery, even more glittery, I'll show you in a second, than the topper shades that you get here in the Dior one, or I should say the one topper shade and the one slightly more shimmery one. The formulation of the YSL ones in general is just different. The newly reformulated Dior palettes, they are a little bit drier because they kind of went for like a clean beauty formula. These ones have like a soft and creamy effect. So it really just depends on what you like. You know, do you like something that's a little bit drier and airier to blend out? Or do you like something that's a little bit more creamier to the touch? And here's that swatch comparison, friends. Honestly, I really don't think you need both of these palettes. They're so similar. If you want the option to give a little bit more depth, or if you have a deeper skin tone, I would go for the Bal Masque, because look, you get two darker tone shades and then one medium tone shade, whereas with Stora Dolls, you're really just getting one deep shade if you want to kind of deepen things up for your skin tone. And the Stora Dolls, the glitter ends up being a little bit just more shimmery. It glimmers on the eyes so beautifully, but you do end up with a little bit more fallout. And then here is the Chanel Tweed Brunette Rose palette. This was unfortunately limited edition, so I don't think that you can get it anymore. Maybe in some boutiques, but I wanted to show it to you guys because a lot of you have this palette. It is just a little bit more neutral than the Bal Masque, which is more cool toned. Let me show you guys the swatch comparisons. And here is that side by side. I do think that most of the shades in this Chanel palette are a little bit lighter. I really don't think that you need both. I love that bright shimmery champagne that you get in the Brunette Rose as well. I don't think you quite get that sheen from the Bal Masque. Hopefully this is helpful, just kind of seeing them side by side, guys. They are very similar, particularly that second shade there from the Chanel and the middle shade from the Dior. And then finally, friends, we have the Natasha Denona Glam palette. This palette is pretty much always gonna dupe most of the cool tone neutral palettes that I review for you here on my channel. And obviously, because there's so many shades, you're gonna be able to create a lot more looks. You have some more cool toned options in there. You have some more warm tone options in there. Things that are more silvery and more gold. So it's just more of a mix there, but obviously the formula is a little bit different. It's slightly more high shine and impactful. And then here are the swatches, friends. As you can see, I pretty much almost duped the Dior palette. There are no like light sparkly topper shades in the Natasha Denona Glam palette, but a lot of the tones can definitely be matched. I really think I can create a very similar look. You can see there also, especially those foily shades at the top, the metallics just have like a creamier, higher shine finish. I'm not saying that they're necessarily better, they're just a little bit different, but if you want something more subtle or you just really don't need a huge palette like this, not everybody wants like a million shades, then I think the Dior palette is still a really good option. All right, friends, time for my final thoughts. Is this good? Do I like it? Would I recommend it? Is it worth the money? Yes, I think it is a very, very beautiful palette. I think that this formula is really good. I know that with the reformulation, not all of the shades are a complete slam dunk, but I would say that all 5 of these shades are Sophia approved. I think that the matte shade that is right here, it swatches and applies a lot better and more smoothly than the darker matte that is in the soft cashmere palette. And obviously this shade is a topper, so it's not gonna give you like that much, so just kind of keep that in mind. But as you saw, it does a really great job of brightening up the inner corner. I also like the fact that these 2 shades, they're not too dark, so I can wear this palette a little bit more for the daytime. In fact, friends, I think that I like this palette more than I like the soft cashmere palette. I know, I feel so crazy saying that. I still like that super metallic shade that you get from the soft cashmere palette, but as you guys saw in my previous review of the new reformulation, I feel like that shade, it's a little bit less metallic, and like I just said, the matte shade, they kind of ruined that shade. So if you're deciding between the newly reformulated soft cashmere and this palette, I would recommend this one. It's a little bit more brown, as I showed you in the comparisons, whereas soft cashmere, it's more of like that steely gray type of tone. I prefer the brown. It's just a little bit more softer with my skin tone and my coloring. You guys know I tend to go more for like neutral to warm tones. So this palette is a little bit more within my comfort zone, and I very much appreciate the lighter, softer, more subtle satins that come in this palette. Now, even though I like this palette, did I need this palette? Absolutely not. So I want you all to pump the brakes for just a second. Think of the comparison section. If you skipped ahead, by the way, go watch the comparison section, because sometimes I get people commenting on the videos and they're like, how does this compare to Nude Dip? Girl, watch the comparison section, because this is a very, very dupable palette. All the palettes that I showed you in the comparison section are excellent palettes. All the formulas are really good, but each of them does have kind of like its nuances. So I totally respect if you're like, well, Natasha Denona is different from Dior. If you care about that, if you kind of enjoy those nuances, by all means, get this palette. But I don't want you all to waste your money thinking that this is gonna be, you know, some sort of groundbreaking, different palette. It's better than soft cashmere. It's a beautiful cool tone palette, but a lot of brands, they put out this color story because it is a nice color story. It does look good on most people, and it is a widely adored set of tones. So it's a really good palette. Do I think you absolutely need it? Not necessarily, but I do recommend it. I think that this would be a really good, you know, first Dior palette, or if you only have a couple Dior palettes, a good addition to a collection for someone who's looking for something that is worth the $65 that they can kind of wear on a regular basis. I think it's really, really nice. So hopefully that is helpful, friends. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below and let me know if you picked this up. Did I sway you in either direction? If you liked this video and if you found it helpful, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It really, really helps me out. And if you are new here, consider subscribing to my channel. What are you waiting for? Head over to my channel page because I have lots more content just like this for you to watch. And with that, friends, I hope that you see some beauty in your day, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye.